Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are witnessing a new chapter in the history of the InterMind Bureau project. Today, I'm conducting my very first historic interview with a guest, and not just any guest. Joining me today is Dr. Bartek, a geophysicist, assistant professor at the Department of Polar and Marine Research of the Institute of Geophysics, Polish Academy of Sciences, and the leader of the global project LIQUIDICE. Welcome, Bartek. I'm so glad to have a chance to host you here.
Hi, I think I've never been introduced so kindly ever.
Really? How comes?
Really, yeah. Super nice, and super nice to be like a first on a podcast.
All right, so it's not the first time doing something like this just for me, which should reduce the amount of stress I'm experiencing right now.
I'm totally not stressed, no worries.
Amazing. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I first reached out to you last year when I was posting on Instagram about the Arctic Circle Assembly 2025 in Reykjavik. The assembly program was so full that in my Insta post back then, I only managed to mention the panel of Polish scientists from your field of expertise, which is cryosphere. Would you like to tell us briefly what it is and what do you work on exactly?
First, I think I will start with Reykjavik. Indeed, we ran a Polish session on glaciological work legacy done by Polish researchers since, well, Polish research in cryosphere and glaciology started quite early as in the 30s, with first overwintering on Barrow Island. And there was some snow research done. And then since 1957, there are like regular expeditions to Hornsey Station and to Svalbard. And we ran glaciological monitoring and snow monitoring in Hornsey Station since late 80s. As for cryosphere is like everything frozen. So it's like all frozen water on Earth, meaning like snow, glaciers, sea ice, and permafrost. So that's the thing I'm working with at EGPAS, but not only at EGPAS, as I work in many international teams, and like we got like small team at the institute working with cryospheric problems. And why it's important? Well, large part of the cryosphere is frozen water, and we all depend on water, and large part of Earth population depends on water coming from cryosphere, especially from glaciers and snow. That's what we are studying now in the LIQUIDICE project. But most of my work is focused reaction of cryosphere to global climate change. How these glaciers are, if they are melting faster, how they are melting, how snowpack reacts to this global change, and how it will influence the water resources and also us, humans.
And during that assembly, out of all the 3,000 participants from all over the world, do you know who made up the audience of your panel on these topics when you spoke on stage?
Well, it's a session we run. It's one of the breakout sessions, so they do not have like a super big audience. It's not like 1,000 people coming to listen to us. Breakout sessions are hosted in like small meeting rooms. We had around 40 people all around the world listening to like Polish glaciological legacy talks. As it's not only Institute of Geophysics running such research in Svalbard, it's also University of Silesia. It's also University of Wrocław, the University of Adam Mickiewicz in Poznań, and Nikolai Copernicus University in Toruń. So there's like few institutions that run such research for a long time in Svalbard.
And as you coordinate global projects with scientists from your country, our country, but also from all over the world, could you say that you find yourself to be in the role of a science diplomat in a way?
Well, maybe a little bit. It's, well, all polar research is connected to polar diplomacy. as it's kind of like natural that we work in the international groups and international environment, especially in Svalbard, which is governed by Norway, but a lot of countries run their research there. Well, I work mainly in Polish Polar Station Horizon. So like most of the researchers working there are from Poland, but in the past 15 years, we got more and more researchers from abroad. But I also worked in Nälesund, which is a research town in northern part of Spitsbergen. For many years, Institute of Geophysics, including me, is involved in kind of like umbrella project, umbrella institution, which is called Svalbard Integrated Arctic Earth Observing System. And it's like umbrella organization for all research infrastructures in Svalbard. And within this organization, we all cooperate. And it's not only research cooperation, but this kind of diplomacy, I would say. And now, for past year, being a coordinator of a big EU project, it's 18 institutions within the project from Europe and from India. I would say that, that part of my role is talking with stakeholders, decision makers about the project and foreseen outcomes and how it may influence the future of all of us. So that's part of diplomacy, at least in my understanding. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Rome for Arctic Circle Rome Forum Polar Diplomacy Conference. And there I will give a talk in a session on the polar diplomacy in Svalbard, how to build the international teams and how to cooperate within those international teams, not only in research, but also beyond the research.
Then, after hearing all of these, 2 questions pop up to my mind. One of these could be, to what extent do you agree with the statement that without science, diplomats would have nothing to talk about regarding the Arctic and small hubs like Svalbard or Greenland? And then another thing is, what qualities do you actually look for in potential co-workers? Because you are now in a position where you can choose people that you want to work with. You have built a network of trusted, proven individuals. And perhaps are you open to any new opportunities, any new contacts yourself right now?
Can you tell once more the first question? As it was pretty long, so just briefly.
That's true. Yes, no problem. So, to what extent would you agree with the statement that without science, diplomats would have nothing to talk about regarding the Arctic and small hubs?
Okay, get it now. Well, I guess it's not they would have nothing to talk about, as probably there's a lot of things I have no idea about. But indeed, for the Arctic region, I would say that research is really important as it's not only us researchers, it's not only citizens of countries that run this research in polar regions, but it's also people living there, indigenous people, but also people living there because they moved and they found this area like a place to live. Then our work as researchers is extremely important to show especially the changes in the environment, as it will affect all of us in the future. Well, actually, it's affecting even now. If you consider melting of permafrost or melting glaciers, not enough snow for many things. So that's important. And getting back to the second question, well, I'm in the research for 20 years, or even a bit more. And within this time, from the beginning, I was involved in polar research. And my international cooperation started quite early during my PhD. Then after PhD, we had one workshop, a snow workshop funded by Research Council of Norway. And it changed a lot for me. As at this workshop, we managed to form a research group, international research group, that is now working together on many projects. Not always all of us in one project, but it's like a platform for cooperation, for looking for funding, but also for having fun. And as what I'm looking for in people I would like to work with, I think it's like super important to trust them. If there's like trust between us, it's much easier to work, that you know that it's gonna be fruitful and it will go smooth. If there's no trust, then it's much harder for us. The other thing, since I'm also in field research, is safety, but it's also connected to trust. If I know that people know the safety rules, and I can trust them with, well, very often it's like trusting with your own life. These are things I'm really looking into people, and they need to be good researchers too. It's not only like field workers or people I like, but yeah, now I have privilege to, within LIQUIDICE, to work with the best.
And in your opinion, minding, of course, your long experience in the field and seeing the changes and the progress in science and in your field of research specifically, and seeing the changes happening globally in the world, I'm really curious to know, what do you find to be the greatest benefits and perhaps also the greatest risks arising from the internalization of science and working on such big global projects?
Well, I'm not sure if there are any risks. Well, with projects, it really depends what you do in a project. As there might be a risk that you end up as like at the end of the line, just digging in the snow for somebody, and there's no gain. The gain is on the one side only. But internationalization of the projects, that's mostly gain. It's like we get a lot, first of all, in terms of people, as people's expertise. As it's not like we have all the experts in glaciology and snow research in Poland. So it's good to work with people from different countries, different backgrounds, as they all bring a lot to the project and to the total outcome of the project. So I'd say it's all good. But when you like work in a field with such people, you also learn a lot about different cultures, different point of view on many things. So like for me, it's also quite important. Yeah. So I would say there are like mostly gains. There's almost no risks, and highly recommend working in the international research groups. There's nothing to be afraid of. You know, like, well, it's less and less in Poland, but like 10, 15 years ago in Poland, there was like a language problem. People thought, oh, like, I don't know the language well, it might not work. It's not a big deal. Like, I'm working with Italians and they have much more language problems than we do still. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And if anybody thinks that, well, maybe it won't work because of language barrier, it will work. It's a matter of attitude.
And this project LIQUIDICE that you specifically coordinate right now is huge. It's approximately 70 people working together on the super sites that were chosen, minding criteria of historical data from these sites. I would like to ask if you could tell right now that glaciers are like hard drives on which nature has sequenced the history and also the future of the Earth. And we are only now learning how to read this data, and we couldn't do it perhaps if we weren't working collectively on a global scale.
Yeah, well, glaciers are kind of like hard drive where layer by layer you have like history of Earth's climate recorded. And yes, we can learn a lot. Well, we already learned a lot from glacier records, as they can go past for thousands of years. In LIQUIDICE, we won't focus on Earth history that is like recorded in a glacial ice. We're more focused on water resources coming from the cryosphere, so from glaciers, from snow, and from permafrost. So it's more like human-oriented. What is the state of water resources now? and how will change in the future, how the climate change will affect those. So that's what we plan to do. More like water from the glaciers and snow than climate report. But yeah, you mentioned these super sites. Well, liquid ice works on different scales. We will have Earth system models, so model that cover all the globe in terms of like climate change, but we also run regional models like for the Alps, for example, and also local models in a catchment scale. So like if I do measurements in a catchment scale, like in situ measurements, I dig or drill a hole in a glacier and measure how much water is stored in this like snow layer, then this can be related only to the catchment scale. This data cannot be put directly to the Earth system model. But thanks to downscaling, we will test if adding new data from the catchment scale will help with better results of the Earth system models and regional models. And as for super sites, yeah, we chose 5 sites, and well, they were chosen because partners in the project have already ongoing research and monitoring there. So we also have historical data. So project is not based only on like 2 years of measurements. We need longer time series to validate the models, to scale them down and up. And we will work in Svalbard on 2 glaciers and 1 unglaciated catchment in Svalbard. We work with data from Norway. There's like a long record of glaciological and hydrological data from Norway. And as in Svalbard, we will look mainly on the environmental effects. Then in Norway, we will focus on water production for hydropower production. Similarly in Greenland, we won't work on the whole Greenland ice cap. We'll work with 2 glaciers in Greenland that fit hydropower production. In Greenland, we will also work with indigenous people and how this climate change and melting glaciers, melting snow affect them. So there's also like societal dimension. Societal dimension will be also covered in Italy, in Monte Rosa. We'll work with tourist organizations and how changing temperatures affect the snowpack and also tourism, winter tourism, like skiing, climbing. There will be also some modeling for hydropower. And in India, the main focus would be on accessibility to fresh water, as 1.2 billion people in India depend on water from glacierized and snow catchments. So it's like, well, a lot. So yeah, that's basically the answers.
What do you think individual countries can gain from being in such projects or being these super sites in the terms maybe of soft power, of again the scientific diplomacy, or else how do these numbers from the world of science translate to numbers in the world of business? Because maybe again the Reykjavik Arctic Circle Assembly, it's both scientific and business forum. So I just wonder maybe who benefits from all this research.
Well, it's not only research we do in LIQUIDICE. It's also information to stakeholders to let them know how this water research, what resources will change in the future. And thanks to that, they would be able to plan ahead. So that's on this like a basic level, I would say it's like very, very important. But this information can be also broader, but as we also plan to do policy briefs on EU level. So EU, it's not only Poland, it's not only Denmark, Germany, Italy, but all EU will be informed by the project how these water resources will change in Europe, but also globally. And it helps planning. So these are gains. And for individual institutions, it's also research that is done. So this funding helps to run monitoring and research at the sites we're all working in. So it's like a cascade of benefits from the institutional, it's like funding of research, but also running research. And we as research institutions, we're obliged to do research, basically, that's our work. Then on regional level, it's like information on changing water resources, and then it can be scaled up to EU level and globally. So that's why we do that. It's not only like my particular interest that I would like to know how much snow has melted in Horsund. It's many different levels.
And as you mentioned, Greenland is one of the super sites in the LIQUIDICE project, providing data to calibrate those high resolution models. Could you tell what are the current forecasts for the ice cover there, considering its growing importance in geopolitics and specifically the recent pretty loud interest in that part of the world?
Well, luckily in past 3 weeks, we hear nothing about political interest in Greenland, which is good. But yeah, there was quite some tension, but well, it seems that the interest in past 2 weeks are in other part of the globe. Well, Greenland is quite important in terms of Arctic safety, but I would more focus on our safety in terms of water coming from Greenland, as it's like in the northern hemisphere, it's like the largest reservoir of fresh water, and this fresh water coming to the ocean may affect the sea currents and heavily affect the climate. So this is, I would say, this is more important than military safety in terms of the Arctic region. And as for global interest in Greenland, well, hard to tell, but probably it's resources like coal and ore, as they are there also. It's not only ice on Greenland, as many people think. Yep, and as for the future of the Greenland, well, it's melting. Whole Arctic is melting, and it's not that there won't be any ice in Greenland in 50 years, but if the melt rates will keep like this, we will see those effects in like a changing climate and more stable climate.
Since we started the trendy topic of Greenland, artificial intelligence, I'm curious how it helps with projects such as LIQUIDICE right now, and I guess it can also be broadly used in your area of expertise.
Well, in modeling, we get colleagues in LIQUIDICE that work with machine learning, which is part of AI. But what is interesting, a week ago, I was in Spain, in Jaca, on a snow hydrology conference, and seen a poster on like what AI thinks about amount of snow on Earth, and it was like totally wrong, totally. The answer from AI was around 40% lower than it is from the assumptions done from remote sensing products. So I would say we should not believe that much into LLM models, as they are not intelligent. They are like super fast tools working on big data sets. So they can be very useful, but I think we need to really care about the results and check them several times before telling that this is true. It's not always true what we get from AI, but they're very great tools that help with not only research work, but also like many other domains in our lives.
For someone hearing about the disruption of ocean currents due to the glacial melt for the first time, how would you explain its urgency to the public? Specifically, why is the silent melting of glacier a more existential danger to our safety than the visible threat of military escalation?
Well, I'm not sure if it's like a silent. Well, when we hear about glacier melt, major thing that comes to people's mind is sea level rise. But yeah, in Atlantic region, it's also kind of important regionally due to disruption of the sea currents and addition of like sweet water to the ocean, which may affect the circulation effects. Last year in the autumn, it was considered as one of big threats for Iceland. So yeah, there's like a huge case, and I would say it's environmental, but also societal. In terms of security, this would be my opinion, but I think it's not such a big issue. I mean, like influence of like fresh water coming from glaciers to the sea, disruption of sea currents. Well, maybe on the long run, it may affect the sea ice, but I would rather look into environmental and societal effects. Actually, changing climate disruption of circulation in the Atlantic, it might get colder in our region, which is kind of like interesting. And for Iceland and bit of Western Europe, it might be also disastrous. But models show that it may happen, and we still don't know if it will happen in terms of like collapse of like circulation system in Northern Atlantic.
Are you predicting to know if it's going to happen by the end of LIQUIDICE Project?
Well, like in LIQUIDICE Project, we won't work on the oceanic circulation wheel. We're focused on water resources from the cryosphere, more in environmental and societal scale, but we don't go into details in terms of like how it will affect the circulation of the oceans. There are small components in Earth system models, but it's not like we'll focus on modeling of sea currents. It's like beyond the scope of the project.
All right. So maybe coming back to the other issues that you mentioned, maybe the societal dimension. Do you know by now how does the accelerating melt affect the timeline for accessing Greenland's rare earth metals? And what good could come from it to the Greenlanders as the local community there?
That's again interesting as we won't work directly with mining industry in Greenland. In Greenland, we will work mostly with hydropower industry. That's the thing we really focus in Greenland, and how these water resources coming from glaciers may change in the future. And well, since there's like a lot of communities in Greenland that really depend on the hydroelectricity, so that's the major issue for the project. I'm sorry, but I cannot answer question on rare elements. I know it's a big issue for Greenland and pricing issue, but we won't work with this.
I understand. Can you then tell a bit more about these hydropower solutions that are expected to be developed in Greenland?
Our aim is more to inform the stakeholders and landowners how water resources will change and how it may affect the already existing infrastructures and future infrastructures. As those are like huge investments. And last week we had a general assembly in Venice and we talked about hydropower production in Greenland. And what came to me by surprise is that these infrastructures are planned for like 150 years more or less. That's their lifespan. So these are huge investments, and in most cases, stakeholders, politicians start thinking in very like short term. Most often, it's like 4 or 5 years to the future. And since these installations have like 150 years lifespan, then there's need for input from, for example, our project to really plan if it's like a good place for hydropower, as most of the water in Greenland comes from the Greenland ice cap. And the water will come from there like for hundreds of years. That's a lot of ice and a lot of water. But there might be some geomorphological changes, some landscape changes also, which may affect those hydropower production structures. So our aim is to inform how water output will be generated, like runoff will be generated, and if it will change, and if like certain places are good places for hydropower. Since like we're after first year of the project, so I won't be able to tell you that these hydropowers will be here or there. And it's we also in the project, we do not have a power to tell that it will be here or there, but we can inform that water resources will change in this way, and it's up to decision makers what to do with this knowledge.
You just mentioned that you came from Venice. You were participating a conference there, and then
Well, it was project meeting. We got like yearly meeting to discuss the cooperation and rising issues, as very often it's easier to talk in person.
sure, so some updates, I guess.
Yeah, updates, but also plans for future, like where to go to look for synergies between work packages. That's important. It's like plenty of people involved in the project. Very often online, it's quite hard to discuss everything. But you had a question. I interrupted you. Sorry for that.
It's okay because actually you just bring me on this track of the question on and on. It's regarding also where you're going to next. It's Rome. right?
Yeah. Next week I go to Arctic Circle Rome Forum Polar Dialogue meeting. But well, and there I meet some partners from LIQUIDICE, and I will talk about role of LIQUIDICE in polar diplomacy. But exactly, I was invited to the session called Arctic Research Cooperation in Svalbard, and we will talk about ways to cooperate. And me myself, I'll give a short talk how we get from small projects through cooperation within SIOS, Svalbard Integrated Arctic Earth Monitoring Service System, to LIQUIDICE Project. It was quite long path as we started in 2014, but I will have like 6 minutes for that. Those are like very busy meetings.
Do you think you can say anything about it briefly right now, or is it better if you wait for the premiere in Rome?
How we get to the LIQUIDICE?
Right, yes.
Yeah, it's Svalbard is it's governed by Norway, but it's like very international community with researchers from many countries. Like Poland, we are based in southern fjord of Hornsund, a bit isolated from the rest. But in the north, there's a research community called Nealesund, and there's like several national research stations now they are all under umbrella of like Nealesund Research Station run by Norway. And Research Council of Norway has two ways to foster cooperation between international researchers. One is dedicated mostly to master and PhD students, and it's called Arctic Field Grant, and so like small projects for fieldwork, including cooperation with other partners. But there are also Svalbard strategic grants, and those are grants for pilot studies or workshops. And a group from Nalesund, people working with snow, they applied to Svalbard Strategy Grant in 2014 to run a workshop on next steps in snow research in Svalbard. And I got invited to this workshop. It was based in Poland, in Sosnowiec. And we spent a week talking about like where should we go, where to follow. It was like a very interdisciplinary community. And at that workshop in Sosnowiec, we decided that we will apply for another project, and it was again funded by Research Council of Norway, and it was again Svalbard Strategy Grant. But this time it wasn't workshop money, it was pilot study. So we did coordinated sampling campaign across western coast and Ostfonna in the north for snow chemistry, snow physics, and snow microbiology. It was a big campaign involving several institutions, and that's how we started. Then we become friends, and we applied also to Research Council of Norway for smaller, bigger projects, but mostly those networking projects and pilot studies. And then SIOS starting its operational phase, and they had a call which was called Access, and we've been successful in first Access call, and it was again like a traverse expedition for snow chemistry, microbiology, and snow physics, but focused also on like networking and seeing different research sites. As like in Svalbard, we're like really focused in like one place when we run monitorings, but it's worth to work together and harmonize the protocols, all that stuff. And then within SIOS, we started forming the group, like a larger group, including remote sensing, more biologists, and there was like a bunch of joint reports within SIOS. And in 2023, I've been approached by Heikki Havainen, SIOS director, and he asked me, what would I think about like forming consortium for the project from the like a SIOS community? And we tried to do that, but we learned that there's not enough expertise in modeling. So then the consortium grew, and we applied for a project, and to our big surprise, we got it. So now from these 18 project partners in LIQUIDICE, seven partners are from SIOS.
It's incredible that if it wasn't for all of these little steps taken through years, either individually or else by networking and meeting the right people, doing the right things, all of that wouldn't happen, right? You wouldn't be where you are now.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen without this workshop in 2014, because we would never met, probably. As this like research or infrastructure, Thorsund and Lealesund, they are like hundreds of kilometers apart. It's like same island, but like still quite far, and like people go there and they just focus on their work, and then they get back to the airport and fly back home. So it would not happen without this workshop, and then it would not happen without help of science, as they really believe in snow research, and we had chance to do more networking, more small research projects that help to foster this cooperation, international cooperation. So that's basically what I will talk in our lesson, that it's important for funding agencies to run networking programs, but these networking programs need to be international, and very often it shouldn't be only like going for a conference or workshop, but it should be also kind of like a pilot study that people from different countries can work in one place together. That's super important as it helps to forge new ideas.
What do you think this project, Liquid Ice, has taught you the most, as you are in this international environment? And you mentioned that you have a chance to maybe gain new perspectives from different institutions, PhD or postdocs from different countries. You work with the best of the best. So I'm sure a lot of inspiration comes from there.
Yeah, well, there's like a lot of new knowledge coming, not only from research perspective, but also cultural perspective. Like at this General Assembly, I learned a lot about Greenland. As like from Polish perspective, I knew about kind of independency, but I wasn't aware that independency is so big. I would rather say it's like two nations in a union than Greenland being part of, yeah, like Greenland being part of Denmark. So this was very interesting. Also from cultural perspective. What else? Like, well, I did not expect that I will need to travel so much and talk with people that are not in the research area or in my expertise area about project, not outcomes, but rather project aims, as we don't have a lot of outcomes yet. It's like we're after first year, there's some data sets released, but like we are like still pretty far to really like getting the big outcomes from the project. And it gives really interesting international perspective how our research interacts with politics and society, especially the Arctic Circle meetings. This is the place to be to observe, but also learn how it works and how we researchers could be a partner in such discussions.
Since there are no Greenlandic institutions officially involved in this partnership, I mean, as far as I read about Liquid Ice Project, then how do you manage to bridge the gap and reach out to this local population? And what methodologies do you use to gather local insights? And how do you ensure that the societal dimension is a reflection of actual Inuit perspectives?
Oh, well, that's true. We don't have institutions directly from Greenland. We have three Danish partners, Geos, DMI, and University of Copenhagen. And our societal connection to Greenland, but not only Greenland, is University of Copenhagen. Lille Rasted Pierce, she works with local people in Greenland, and she already did some surveys and interviews. And while she's looking into these like societal impacts of cryospheric changes on local people and what we can learn from them. So there's no direct connection in terms of like having partner directly from Greenland, but we have like very tight connection with Greenlandic communities through University of Copenhagen, and they work there. Hope it fulfills the answers.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Thank you for all of this. Actually, there is one more question that came to my mind based on what you said, if I heard you correctly, that we can learn certain things from the Greenlanders. And that would be regarding the world of digitalization that we live in, where we are surrounded by big data and probably in scientific environments, oftentimes also with the cold facts. Do you still see space for humans to maintain deeper kind of personal bond with nature?
Yes, of course. I think it's like super important to have this personal bond, and while like taking into account the local knowledge to the project, it's not easy. In earth sciences, like we work with like big scale models, but still like local insight into the processes and environment is extremely useful. As you know, like we go to the field like once, twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. And there are people, local people that observe the changes we are studying constantly, day by day. So getting information from them, and it don't need to be like that they measure something, more like impressions, what is changing and what they see as a long-term change. It's very useful in for sure in interpretation of the results, but also taking account their needs to project outputs as well. LIQUIDICE is a research project, but we also have like a strong component on informing different stakeholders on project outputs. But it's quite important to know what is needed by communities. So this is part we will learn from local people. So it's not like that we look for problems and we think that, oh, this will be their problem. We will rather ask, what is your problem, and we'll try to help with finding answers. I see this very important, but it's not easy.
A random thought. What brains in general you have access to right now, and how you see also the scientific world changing? Maybe is there something you think would be worth hearing from you, maybe as an advice to your younger peers regarding their concerns for either, the future or their career development, or pursuing something that seems to be not such an obvious path to go?
Well, I would say, like, considering my personal path to where I am now, well, go for like any meeting that is partly in your field, but sometimes it's worth to go to the broader community. And I would rather choose workshops than big conferences. Big conferences are really interesting, but by big, I mean like in my field, it would be EDU in Vienna. That's like 20,000 abstracts. I would say at like early stage of the career, it's not very worth to go there. You will get lost. So rather small workshops. Remember about outreach, as it helps to get this like human perspective. Yeah, and be open for networking. And if you're on a meeting, try to speak up. There's no stupid questions. And if you do not understand anything, just ask. I said like no stupid questions. But I think it's like on these workshops, it's like very important to be proactive. That helps a lot. And other thing is in the networking, try to build personal bonds. So like remember, it's not only like research that cares. Like it's much easier to work with people that you know personally, and there's more than research talk between you. So like in Vienna, in Venice past week, well, we talked a lot about research, but we also talked about our kids, marriages, and funny stories from our life, which helps to maintain colleagueship, friendship. Like, well, it really depends on how you bond, but it's like very important. Like I would say, like yeah, personal connections. It's much easier to work with people that you like and they like you. It's not like you need to have friends to be successful in research, but well, from my perspective, I prefer to work with people that I feel good with and I trust too. As this like personal thing also helps a lot with trust. So that would be advice. If you go for meetings, speak up and try to build personal bonds. Highly recommend it.
Thank you. And how would you see the topic of competition and cooperation in such field?
Well, that's a good question. Like, yeah, like we are competitive, but my feeling is, and my experience is that we can do much, much more in cooperation than being competitive. So I'm on like a cooperation side. I do not see this like race for something. Like we're competitive sometimes with applying to the projects for national or international agencies. But in terms of like doing research, we gain much more being cooperative than competitive. Also, in terms of geographical span, it's you can do much more like working in several catchments around Svalbard and publish better research than just focusing on like tiny tiny thing from your field. So yeah, cooperation and dialogue, like it's also very important. Communication, it's not easy again, but yeah, that's how life of researchers is, not easy in cooperation, not easy in communication, sometimes competitive, and very often underpaid, unfortunately. But then if you have like a good team, then it's easier to apply for projects. It's easier to write good research papers. And then it helps to grow. Yeah.
And with this positive accent, I think I'm going to...
Cooperation first. And remember to speak up. Like if you go somewhere, there's no stupid questions.
Cooperation first. Thank you, Bartek.
You're welcome. It was nice speaking with you.
Thank you so much for your time. And yes, to wrap it up, my guest was Dr. Bartek Lux. Please check the video description to find out where you can follow Bartek's scientific activities. And yeah, again, thank you for your time, your openness to this conversation, your cooperation in preparing for it. And I'm glad we could have met in this virtual space. And yeah, I wish you continued success, curiosity, and perseverance. Difficult word, but yeah, it's from NASA. My favorite words in the scientific world when I doubt if I can get from A to B. It's just perseverance and curiosity. So I hope this will also stay with you. And yeah, thank you once again.
Thank you very much. It was super nice talking with you. And well, if you want to hear more about LIQUIDICE, go for our social media. Our outreach team is like super active. So like we inform about what's going in the project constantly. Yeah, super nice talking with you and looking forward to meet you in person, hopefully one day.
Thank you so much, and likewise.